Well, thank you, Congressman Young, the Dean of the House, and it's a great honor to be here. I am also deeply honored and humbled to serve in the seat that Senator Stevens held for over 40 years with such distinction for Alaska, for America. And I know we're all waiting in anticipation for the unveiling, so I wanted to make sure, again, what Congressman Young just mentioned, to make sure that we give a hearty round of applause for Dean Larson, who worked so hard to make this happen. And no Alaskan should be surprised that, like so many throughout the state, Dean once worked for Senator Stevens as an intern. And so I think it's great that that Alaska connection to this portrait is certainly a key part of it. I also want to congratulate the Stevens family and truly thank them, all of them, for their service and sacrifice and for sharing their father and their spouse with Alaska and America for so long. It's not easy. People know that. Sometimes they don't recognize it. And I think all of you really deserve a really strong round of applause from everybody. So I had the honor of first meeting and getting to know Senator Ted Stevens back in 1990, almost 30 years ago, not as a colleague, like my colleagues here, like so many here, but as someone who was very important to the most important person in my life, and that was my wife, Julie, who's here right now. And like so many people gathered here in the old Senate chamber, Julie was a Stevens staffer, and there are so many here. When she and I started dating in 1990, I was a Georgetown law student, and but I immediately saw the special family-like bond between Senator Stevens and his staff. This tough, gruff senator loved his staff like family, and you could see it. Worked them hard, but loved them. I have a wonderful photo from those days near my desk in the Hart Senate office building of Senator Stevens giving my wife Julie this warm bear hug embrace. They both have huge smiles on their face. It's a beautiful picture. So I got to know the senator and his family through my family, which can of course illuminate different aspects of his life and career and character. The stories in my family and Julie's family recall the integrity of Ted Stevens as a young U.S. attorney in Fairbanks in the early 1950s. Yes, he was a hard-charging prosecutor, but he also had a reputation as treating all people fairly, and I mean all people. Remember, this is the early 1950s, so let's just say Abraham Lincoln's Gettysburg proposition that all men are created equal wasn't necessarily alive and well everywhere, especially as it related to the native people of Alaska. As many of you know, my wife, Julie, is Athabascan, Alaska Native, and this reputation of Ted Stevens from his earliest days in Alaska as a fair-minded public official who took the time to help out a close relative of hers back then was noticed in my family and the larger Native community. It began a half-century-long relationship and friendship between my mother and father-in-law and Senator Stevens, and it also heralded a critical element of his legacy for Alaska and America. Someone who cared deeply about the Alaska Native people and who worked relentlessly to improve their lives in communities which historically have been some of the most impoverished in America. Reflecting back on his time in Fairbanks in the 1950s, this is pre-statehood, Ted Stevens said he, quote, found the passion of my career, and that was the Alaska dream. What was that dream? A dream, he said, of Alaska with the promises of the 21st century springing up from the Arctic. In Alaska, where our federal government works with us, not against us, to achieve our destiny, to develop our resources, and an economy for the benefit of Alaskans and for all Americans. And of course, this great senator worked tirelessly for those dreams. In the last speech he gave on the Senate floor, he recounted some of his successes. Quote, "Where there was nothing but tundra and forest, today there are now airports, roads, ports, water and sewer systems, hospitals, clinics, communications networks, research labs, and much, much more," he said. "Alaska was not Seward's folly and is no longer an impoverished territory. Alaska is a great state, an essential contributor to our nation's energy security and our nation's national defense." In that speech, he said that he was proud to have had a role in the transformation of Alaska. But we all know Senator Stevens was being way too humble. He didn't have just a role. He played the lead role. And there's no doubt about that. And that is just one of the many reasons we're all gathered here for this very exciting unveiling this afternoon. So I think I'm going to call up the Democratic leader to close out the ceremony.